It happened on a night when no one should have been outside. A storm so violent it sounded like the sky was breaking apart. Lightning, wind, shattered branches. And in the middle of it all, a young police officer fighting to stay alive, bleeding alone beside her wrecked patrol car. She tried calling for backup. No one answered. Her radio was gone, her vision fading, and the freezing rain felt like it was pulling her body into the asphalt. She whispered one last plea into the darkness. "Somebody, please." And then headlights. Truck slowed. A door slammed. Boots splashed through the mud. A stranger ran toward her, dropped to his knees, and cupped her face with both hands, gently lifting her eyes to his. "Hey, stay with me. I've got you. I'm not letting you die out here." She didn't know his name. He didn't know hers. But in that moment, that desperate, fragile moment, something started between them. Something neither of them expected. But both of them would fight for. Because this wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of a connection that would change both of their lives forever. The storm had swallowed the entire highway. Rain hammered the pavement so hard it looked like the road itself was boiling. Wind screamed through the trees, bending branches until they cracked like bones. Headlights blurred into long streaks of white, and thunder rolled so close it rattled the metal guardrails. Officer Emily Hart should have pulled over. But dispatch had been silent for 10 minutes, and the call she was responding to, a suspected abduction, didn't give her the luxury of waiting. A flash of lightning lit up the sky. Then the world exploded. A pickup truck skidded across the opposite lane, hydroplaned, and slammed directly into the front of her patrol car. The impact tore her vehicle off the road and spun it violently into a ditch. Her seatbelt locked, her head hit the window, and darkness swallowed her for a moment. When she came to, she felt the warmth of blood soaking through her uniform. Her vision flickered. Her fingers trembled. The radio sputtered static, dead. She dragged herself out of the destroyed car, every breath a stab of pain. Rain poured into the wound on her side, cold enough to make her gasp. She shouted for help, but the wind carried her voice away. Emily collapsed onto the mud beside the patrol car, breathing too fast, bleeding too fast, losing hope too fast. Her eyes fluttered, barely open. She whispered into the void, "Please, someone." Far down the road, barely visible through the storm, a pair of headlights slowed. They flickered once, then stopped. A door opened, boots hit the pavement, and a shadowy figure stepped into the rain, moving toward her, fast. He didn't hesitate. He didn't freeze. He didn't look away. He dropped to his knees beside her, soaked to the bone, breathless from running through the storm. He gently lifted her face with both hands, his voice steady, warm, almost intimate in the chaos around them. "Hey, don't close your eyes on me. I've got you. I'm right here." Emily tried to speak but only managed a broken whisper. He brushed the wet hair from her forehead with a tenderness no stranger should have had. He didn't even know her name. But in that moment, he was the only thing keeping her alive. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Please." And for the first time since the crash, Emily felt something stronger than fear, hope. Her pulse was fading. Not slowly, but in that terrifying, slippery way where every second feels like it might be the last. The rain kept washing blood down her side, forming dark streaks across the mud. She tried to focus on his face, but everything was blurry, like looking through cracked glass. He leaned closer, shielding her from the storm with his own body. "Look at me," he said softly but firmly. His voice carried this calm you don't find in ordinary people, the kind of calm that comes from surviving things that should have broken you. She blinked hard, trying to keep him in her sight. He pressed his hands over the wound on her side, and Emily gasped. He wasn't gentle, he couldn't be, but he kept his touch steady, intentional, almost protective. Rain streamed off his jaw. His clothes were already soaked. His hands shook slightly, but his eyes never left hers. "What's your name?" he asked. She opened her mouth, but only a strained breath escaped. Her lips trembled. She tried again, forcing the air out. Emily." He nodded once, locking the name into his mind like a mission parameter. Emily, you're not dying here. Not tonight. I won't let that happen. A tear, or maybe just rain, slid down her cheek. She didn't know why, but hearing her name in his voice felt grounding, human, like she wasn't just a uniform bleeding in a ditch. She grabbed a fistful of his shirt with what little strength she had left. Please don't go, she whispered, almost too quiet to hear over the storm. He froze for half a second, just half a second, and something changed in his eyes. He placed one hand gently against her cheek, thumb brushing away the wetness there, not even thinking about what he was doing, only knowing she needed it. I'm right here, he said. I'm not going anywhere. Her breathing hitched. Her eyes glazed for a moment. She was slipping. He leaned in, voice firmer now, almost commanding. Emily, stay awake. Look at me. She tried. God, she tried. But the cold was sinking deeper, numbing her body. Hey, he said quickly, tapping her cheek with his fingers to keep her conscious. Stay with me, please. For a moment, she managed to hold his gaze, and something unexplainable passed between them. Something fragile, something impossible, something real. Her fingers loosened on his shirt. Her eyelids fluttered. No, 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 Emily. He shook her gently. Stay with me. But she faded into unconsciousness, her body going limp in his arms. He looked at her for a long second, jaw tight, breath unsteady. Then he scooped her off the ground with a determination that felt deeply personal. It wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a vow. He didn't waste a second. The moment Emily went limp in his arms, something fierce flashed across his face. Not panic, but resolve. The kind of resolve born from a past that left scars deep enough to teach a man one thing. You save who you can. When you can. No matter what it costs you. He slid one arm beneath her knees and the other around her back, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Her head fell against his chest, her wet hair plastering across his shirt. Even unconscious, she instinctively curled slightly toward his warmth. A bolt of lightning tore across the sky, illuminating them both. Her pale, blood-streaked face and his jaw clenched tight with focus. Rain hammered them as he started moving. Not walking, not stumbling, but striding forward with this unstoppable intensity, as if the storm itself couldn't slow him down. He kept glancing down at her, whispering through the rain even though she couldn't hear him. You're okay, Emily. I've got you. Just stay alive. That's all you have to do. Please don't give up on me now. Every few steps he tightened his grip, holding her closer against the cold wind. Her chest rose shallowly against him, barely enough to be called breathing, but enough to keep him going. The mud sucked at his boots with each step. Water rushed around his ankles. Branches slapped his arms and face as he pushed through the chaos. But he never put her down. At one point her body shivered violently, shock beginning to take over. Instinctively, he shifted her higher, pressing her against his heartbeat like he was trying to warm her with the only heat he had left. Thunder roared above them. Cars passed in the distance, unable to see them through the sheets of rain. He shouted once, but the storm swallowed the sound whole. His truck was still a ways down the road, and every step felt like time slipping through his fingers. But then, through the swirling darkness, headlights. He blinked, pushing the rain out of his eyes. A small sedan had pulled onto the shoulder, hazard lights blinking like a lifeline. A silhouette leaned out, yelling something he couldn't hear. He waved wildly with one arm, still clutching Emily with the other. The sedan door flew open. Someone ran toward him, shouting over the wind. Hey, is she hurt? He didn't slow down. She's bleeding bad, he yelled back. She needs a hospital now. The driver turned instantly. Get in, hurry. He ran the last few steps, slid into the back seat with Emily still in his arms, and the door slammed shut behind him. For the first time since he found her, the rain wasn't hitting her anymore. He brushed the hair off her face again, softer this time. You're safe now, he whispered. But he wasn't reassuring her. He was reassuring himself. And for reasons he didn't understand yet, he needed her to live. The sedan screeched to a stop under the emergency entrance canopy, tires splashing water everywhere. Before the engine even shut off, he kicked the back door open and lifted Emily back into his arms. Her skin felt colder now. Too cold. He didn't wait for a stretcher. Didn't wait for questions. Didn't wait for permission. He stormed through the sliding glass doors carrying her, shouting, "I need a trauma team now." Nurses froze for a second. Then everything snapped into motion. A gurney rolled toward them. Gloved hands reached out. Voices layered over each other in a frenzy of medical commands. BP dropping. She's hypothermic. Get warm saline ready. Officer down, call it in. He started lowering her onto the gurney, but her hands slowly slid off his shirt as they pulled her away. And for a split second, he felt that tiny separation like a punch. "Sir, we need space," a nurse insisted, guiding him back. But he stepped forward again. She asked me not to leave." The nurse softened. "We're not leaving her. And neither will you. But you have to let us work." They rushed her through double doors and disappeared into the trauma bay, leaving him standing alone in the bright, sterile hallway, dripping rainwater onto the floor, chest heaving, hands trembling with adrenaline. He finally took a breath. Then another. Then his legs gave out. He sat heavily onto a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. He didn't understand why this hit him so hard. Why he felt like his entire soul was hanging in limbo behind those double doors. Most people don't get attached this fast. But most people don't find someone bleeding to death in their arms. Most people don't hear their name whispered like a last prayer. Most people don't feel a stranger clutch their shirt like they were the only safe thing in the world. He stared at his hands. Her blood was still on them. Time passed strangely after that, minutes stretching into hours, the storm outside slowing to a cold drizzle. Every time the trauma doors opened, he jerked his head up. Every time a nurse passed, he searched their face for answers. Finally, sometime around dawn, a doctor stepped out. The exhaustion on his face told him one thing. Had been close. Very close. "You brought her in just in time," the doctor said quietly. "She lost a lot of blood. But she's stable now." She asked for her rescuer, if he was still here. His heart thudded so hard he felt it in his throat. "She's awake." "Yes. Still groggy, but she'll make a full recovery." "And she asked for me." The doctor smiled faintly. She said, and I quote, "Please tell him he didn't let me die." For a moment he couldn't breathe. He followed the doctor down the hallway, every step heavier than the last, until they reached her room. The door was slightly open. The lights were dim. And Emily lay there, pale but alive, with an 4 in her arm and monitors softly beeping beside her. Her eyes fluttered open. She searched the room slowly, then saw him. A tiny, tired smile touched her lips. "You stayed." He stepped inside, voice low, almost breaking. "Yeah. I told you I wouldn't go anywhere." She lifted her hand weakly. He hesitated only a second before he took it. And the moment their fingers touched, everything quieted. The storm, the fear, the uncertainty, it all faded. Just them. Just that connection neither had asked for, but both felt deeply. The room was quiet enough that he could hear the soft beeping of the heart monitor and the distant hum of hospital vents. Emily looked fragile but alive, cheeks pale, lips dry, hair still tangled from the storm. But her eyes had a warmth he hadn't expected. He pulled a chair closer to her bedside, careful not to let go of her hand until the very last second. When he finally sat, she lifted her fingers slightly, reaching for him again. And he couldn't help himself. He took her hand back. "You really stayed all night," she whispered. Her voice was soft, raspy from pain and dehydration, but still steady. "Still her." He nodded. "I wasn't about to leave you alone after what happened out there." She swallowed hard, eyes glistening. Most people wouldn't have even stopped. He didn't answer. He just held her gaze with this quiet intensity that made her chest tighten. After a moment, she winced and tried to shift her position. He leaned forward without thinking. Slow. Don't move too much. His hands hovered near her shoulder, not touching her but ready to. You're safe now. Emily studied him, really studied him, and something in her expression softened. What's your name? She finally asked. He hesitated. Not because he didn't want to tell her, but because he felt strangely nervous, like the act of saying it out loud made something real between them. Elias. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Elias, you saved my life. He shook his head. No, I just found you. You didn't just find me, she insisted, her voice trembling. You carried me. You kept me awake. You didn't panic. You stayed all night. Elias, that's not nothing. He exhaled through his nose, almost laughing, not from humor, but from this overwhelmed, unfamiliar feeling expanding in his chest. I'm just glad you made it, he said quietly. There was a moment of silence. Deep one. The kind that only happens when two people feel something they don't know how to name yet. Emily broke it with a small breath. You were shaking, she said, when you held me. I remember that. He looked down at their joined hands. It wasn't the rain, he admitted. You scared me. I didn't want to lose you. Her eyes widened slightly, not with fear, but with something warm, tender, dangerous. Why? She whispered. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know. Or maybe he did, and that was the problem. Finally he said, because no one deserves to die alone in the rain. Emily's throat tightened. That's not what I meant. He looked up. Their eyes locked. Neither of them blinked. She could feel it. He could feel it. A spark. Pull. The quiet gravity drawing them closer in a way neither expected. She squeezed his hand gently. Elias, when I woke up, I didn't feel afraid anymore, she murmured. And I think it's because you were there. His jaw tightened. That same protective instinct from the storm flickering across his expression. I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. They stayed like that for a long moment. Her hand in his gaze anchored on her like she was the only thing in the room. Eventually he stood uncertain. I should let you rest. But as he turned toward the door, her voice stopped him. Elias. He looked back. Don't go far. Her vulnerability hit him harder than the thunder ever did. I won't, he said softly. I'm right here. And he took his seat again, silently promising himself. He wasn't leaving until she was ready for him to. Emily didn't expect him to come back the next day. Most people disappear after the crisis ends. They go back to their lives. They forget the intensity of the moment. And she had spent enough years in uniform to know that gratitude rarely lasts longer than a single conversation. But the next morning, right as sunlight broke through the blinds, she heard a soft knock on the door. Her pulse jumped. Elias stepped inside carrying 2 coffees, looking awkwardly out of place in a hospital room but somehow exactly where he needed to be. You're awake, he said gently. You're here, she answered. He smiled, small, shy, the kind that feels rare on a man who looks like he's lived through storms long before the one she crashed in. I didn't know how you take your coffee, he added, holding 1 cup out. So I guessed. She took it, fingers brushing against his. And even though the touch was brief, it sent a warm ripple up her arm. Thank you, she murmured. He took the chair beside her bed, same as the night before. Same steady presence. Same quiet warmth. And Emily realized with a slow, sinking certainty that she had missed him. The room felt different when he wasn't in it, emptier. They talked. Not about the crash. Not about police work. Not about fear or pain. But about small things, human things. Places they'd lived. Movies they liked. Foods they couldn't stand. Memories that made them laugh. Emily caught herself smiling more in that hour than she had in weeks. After a nurse came in with medication, Elias stood and said he'd let her rest. But before he left, he nodded toward the window. Storm's finally gone, he said. She blinked slowly. Elias, will you come back tomorrow? He hesitated, not because he didn't want to but because he wanted it too much. Yeah, he said softly. I'll be here. And he was. Every day. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes flowers, sometimes nothing but himself, which Emily secretly realized was the thing she looked forward to most. Her fellow officers noticed. They teased her gently. Her doctor raised an eyebrow more than once. But no one said what she already knew. She wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. She wasn't waking up from nightmares of the crash. She wasn't feeling the weight of the job as heavily as before. Because every evening, just before the hallway lights dimmed, Elias walked in, always with that quiet smile, always with the same look in his eyes, like seeing her made his whole day steadier. And as her strength returned, so did something else she'd thought she'd lost. Oh. One afternoon, while he helped her take a slow walk down the corridor, she leaned just a little too close. Her shoulder brushed his. He didn't move away. Neither did she. They didn't mention it. They didn't have to. Some things speak louder in silence. Later that night, as he prepared to leave, she touched his arm lightly. "Elias, you didn't have to keep coming back," she said, voice soft but full of meaning. He turned to her, eyes warm, steady. "I know," he said, then added, quieter. "But I wanted to." Something fluttered deep in her chest. Something new. Something dangerous. Something beautiful. And for the first time since that stormy night, Emily didn't feel like the one who needed saving. By the time Emily was strong enough to walk without help, she realized something strange. She knew almost everything about Elias. Except the one thing she couldn't stop wondering. How did he know exactly what to do the night she crashed? How did a random stranger apply pressure like a medic? How did he stay so calm while carrying her through a storm? How did he recognize shock before even touching her pulse? One evening, as the soft orange glow of sunset spilled into her hospital room, she finally asked him, "Elias, who taught you all that? The way you helped me, it wasn't luck." He froze. Not dramatically, not with panic, but with that subtle tension of someone whose walls haven't been touched in years. He stared at the floor, then at the window, anywhere except her eyes. "Just experience," he muttered. "Experience doesn't teach that level of control," she pressed gently. "Someone trained you." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Then he exhaled slowly, like letting out a breath he'd been holding for 5 years. "I was a combat medic," he said quietly. Emily's heartbeat stuttered. He kept his eyes down as he continued, voice low, steady, but carrying old cracks. 7 years. 2 deployments. I saw more than I should have. Lost more than I could handle. And when I came home, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere anymore." She stepped closer. "What happened?" His jaw tightened. "My wife," he whispered. Emily blinked. A flicker of jealousy, guilt, confusion, something flicked across her chest. "She passed?" Emily asked softly. He nodded once, slowly, painfully. "There was a crash," he murmured. "A drunk driver. I tried everything. I used every skill I had. But she died in my arms before the ambulance even arrived." Emily's breath caught. Elias swallowed hard, eyes glistening in a way she'd never seen. Not in the storm, not during her recovery, not ever. "I stopped practicing medicine after that. Stopped trying to help people. He shook his head. "I shut down." Emily understood now. The shaking hands, the desperation in his voice, the way he whispered to her in the rain. Saving her wasn't about heroism. It was about redemption. Healing. Rewriting the ending he couldn't outrun. She stepped closer, gently placing her hand over his. "Elias, you didn't fail her." His head bowed. "You don't know that." "I do," she said, voice trembling but certain. "Because you saved me. And I saw the way you fought for my life. No one who carries that kind of heart could ever call themselves a failure." A tear slipped down his cheek. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just painfully human. Emily wiped it away with her thumb. And for the first time he let her. Their hands intertwined naturally, like they had been meant to find each other long before the storm. She whispered, "You didn't just save me, Elias. You saved yourself a little too." He looked at her then, really looked, and something shifted between them. Something real. Something fragile. Something neither of them dared to name yet. But it was there, alive, growing, and impossible to ignore. Emily was discharged on a Thursday afternoon, still sore, still moving slowly, but finally free from the hospital's beeping machines and fluorescent lights. Elias insisted on driving her home, even though she swore she was fine. "You're literally stitched together," he said. "You're being dramatic," she replied. "You were bleeding out in the rain 2 weeks ago." Fair point. He helped her into his truck with gentle hands that remembered holding her through a storm, steadying her steps down hospital halls, brushing hair from her forehead when she flinched in pain. The drive was quiet, comfortable. Not the kind of silence that weighs heavy. The kind that feels like two hearts breathing in sync. When they reached her apartment building, she hesitated before opening the door. "Elias." "Yeah. Would you, maybe, want to stay for dinner?" He blinked, caught off guard, caught soft. "You don't have to thank me," he said quietly. "This isn't a thank you," she replied. Her voice was light, but her eyes were saying something deeper, something brave, something new. His chest rose with a slow breath. "Okay," he murmured. "I'd like that." The apartment was small, warm, lived in. Framed photos on the walls. Graduation, police academy, her parents, her first patrol shift. A worn couch. A half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. A plant struggling for survival near the window. Elias looked around with this soft, almost protective expression, like stepping into her world meant more than he expected. "I can cook," he offered. "Just tell me where things are." Emily raised an eyebrow. "A combat medic who cooks. I'm multi-talented." "Prove it." He did. He moved around her kitchen with quiet confidence. Knife skills too precise, seasoning choices too instinctive. She sat at the counter watching him, chin resting in her hand, unable to hide her smile. "You know," she teased, "you're making it really hard to believe you don't do this every night." "I don't," he said softly. "It's been a long time since I cooked for someone." Something warm tugged at her heart. They ate at her small table, the lights dim, the storm long gone, but the intimacy of that night still hanging between them. Unspoken, undeniable. Between bites, their hands brushed. The kind of brush that lingers a second too long to be accidental. He looked up. She looked back. Neither of them spoke. The air shifted. After dinner, when he stood to leave, she walked him to the door. The moment felt like a cliff, like one wrong move could send both of them falling into something they couldn't take back. He opened the door but didn't walk through. "Emily." "Yes. Thank you. For trusting me. For tonight." She stepped closer. Close enough to feel his warmth. Close enough for her heartbeat to trip over itself. "You saved my life, Elias," she whispered. "And I'm not just talking about the storm." His breath caught. Her eyes lifted to his. He didn't kiss her. She didn't ask him to. But the space between them, barely an inch, felt like the beginning of something neither of them was ready for. And yet both of them desperately needed. He finally stepped back, voice rough. "Good night, Emily." She whispered it back, watching him walk away. Her chest full of something she hadn't felt in years. Oh, longing. And fear, the good kind. The kind that tells you your life is about to change forever. A week later, Emily was back on light duty. No patrols, no high-risk calls, just paperwork and recovery. Her captain insisted. Her body appreciated it. Her heart was a mess. Every time her phone buzzed, she hoped it was Elias. Every time she looked at her door, she half expected him to walk through it. Every night in bed, she replayed that almost kiss at her apartment doorway. But Elias kept his distance. Not in a cold way. Not in a disappearing way. Just cautious, measured. Like a man afraid of walking too close to the fire he knows could burn him again. Then came the call. Quiet Tuesday evening. Sun setting behind the station. Emily filing reports when dispatch buzzed her line. "Unit 12, we need an available officer on Willow Ridge. Possible assault in progress. Civilian injured." Caller reported the man collapsed. Emily froze. Willow Ridge. That was 12 minutes from her apartment. 6 minutes from Elias's job. The street he walked often. Her pulse kicked into overdrive. "Dispatch," she said sharply. "Repeat the caller's name." There was a beat of static. Caller identified himself as Elias Morgan. Emily didn't even let dispatch finish. She grabbed her gear and sprinted out the door, ignoring her captain's shout behind her. The drive blurred. Traffic didn't exist. Streetlights streaked past as she pushed the car faster than she'd admit later. When she reached the location, she slammed the door open and ran toward the cluster of flashing lights. Paramedics knelt beside someone on the ground. Man. Broad shoulders. Dark hair. Her heart stopped. Elias! She dropped to her knees beside him, ignoring protocol, ignoring everyone else. Her hands went straight to his face, cradling his cheeks the exact way he had cradled hers in the storm. His eyes flickered open. "Emily!" His voice was weak but relieved, like he'd been waiting for her. "What happened?" she whispered, hands shaking. Someone was getting mugged," he said, wincing. "I stepped in. The guy had a pipe, caught me in the ribs." She swallowed hard. Of course he stepped in. That's who he was. You shouldn't be getting between people and weapons," she said, voice cracking. He managed a strained smile. "Says the woman who almost died in a ditch." "Elias, this isn't funny." Her voice broke. His eyes softened. "Hey, I'm okay," he whispered. "I just called because I didn't know who else." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. He had called her. Not 911. Not a friend. Because in his mind, in his heart, she was the person who came when he needed someone. Paramedics moved in, but Emily didn't let go of him. She pressed her forehead to his for a moment, both of them breathing unsteadily. "You scared me," she whispered. "You terrify me," he answered softly. Then, without thinking, without overanalyzing, without fear, she leaned in and kissed his forehead, her lips lingering there like a promise. "I'm not losing you," she murmured. "Not now. Not after everything." He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. "You won't," he said. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher, and Emily walked beside him, her hand wrapped around his until they reached the ambulance. Not officer and civilian. Not rescuer and rescued. Not storm survivors. But something deeper. Something that had been building quietly, intensely, beautifully since the night she bled into his hands. Everything had come full circle. The roles reversed. The connection undeniable. And Emily Hart knew, with absolute clarity, she wasn't running from this anymore. Elias was released from the hospital the next morning with bruised ribs, a mild concussion, and explicit instructions to rest. Emily ignored all of that. She picked him up, helped him into her cruiser, and brought him home like she was escorting something breakable. He tried to joke about it. She didn't laugh. "Emily, I'm fine. You were lying on the ground bleeding when I got there. It wasn't that bad. You called for help." "Okay, that part was bad." They reached his apartment, parked, turned off the engine, but neither of them moved. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was charged, warm, hopeful. Like both of them were standing at the edge of something they'd been walking toward since the storm, without even realizing it. Elias finally broke the silence with a quiet breath. "I didn't want to scare you," he said. "You didn't," she responded. "You mattered." His head turned sharply. Not in shock. In recognition. Those were the words he hadn't been brave enough to say. "Emily," he whispered. She reached out slowly, as if touching something sacred, and took his hand. The same hand that held pressure to her wound, the same hand that carried her through the rain, the same hand she had held in that hospital bed. "You saved me first," she said softly. "You saved me again last night." "That's not true," he murmured. "It is," she insisted. "Before the storm I was numb, tired, running on fumes. But you," she swallowed hard, finding her courage. "You brought something back." Elias's breath faltered. "What?" he asked quietly. "Feeling." For a moment it looked like he might break. His jaw clenched, his chest rose slowly, and his eyes shimmered with something raw and unguarded. He lifted her hand, not dramatically or suddenly, but with the gentleness of a man who had lost too much and was terrified of losing again. "Emily, I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Neither do I," she whispered. "But I want to try. With you." A shaky laugh escaped him, a disbelieving, hopeful sound he hadn't made in years. Yeah. He let go of her hand only long enough to reach forward and touch her cheek, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The same gesture he made the night he found her. But this time it wasn't desperation. It was affection, intention. She leaned into his palm, eyes soft. "Elias," she said, barely above a breath. And he kissed her. Not like a movie moment, not rushed or dramatic, but slow, warm, steady. Like two people finally exhaling after weeks of holding their breath. Like something real, something earned. When they pulled away, foreheads touching, he whispered, "This doesn't feel like a rescue." Emily smiled, eyes closed. "It's not." He opened his eyes, looking right at her. "It feels like a beginning." She kissed him again. And this time he pulled her close, hands gently resting at her waist, careful of her healing ribs and her still tender side. Outside, the sun climbed higher, washing the world in gold. The storm that brought them together was long gone, leaving only stillness, warmth, the quiet promise of something beautiful. Two broken hearts finding each other in the wreckage. Two souls choosing to heal together. A stranger in the rain. And the woman he refused to let die. Not a rescue. Beginning.